Okay, our next question. What happens to the price of a drug if the pharmacy switches manufacturer? This is an interesting question because people don't give this much consideration. And it's one of those things they don't think about, but this can have a very, very big impact on you depending on the circumstance. Now, also keep in mind, this could have no impact on you whatsoever. So this is one of those things where if you're actually finding this video for the first time, hi, be sure to take a look at the rest of our videos and go to our website at www.mymedicareinsider and check out all the things we have to offer. But also, this can happen and you don't even realize it. And this question actually came up because it happened to a client of ours again more recently, and we had to deal with it. We actually were able to identify the problem fairly quickly, but we did notice it happened. So here's what's going on. This is not a brand drug issue. This is a generic drug issue. A brand drug is a brand drug because there is one company that is offering it. And a brand drug can change prices for a whole bunch of reasons. We're not going to talk about that. The generic drugs are what we care about. So I'm going to use an example. Let's say atorvastatin, which is a generic drug. It is the generic drug of Lipitor. Now, when atorvastatin was Lipitor, it was just Lipitor. That's all it was. But now, in addition to you being able to buy it at a very high price by the manufacturer of Lipitor, you can also buy it in generic form. And in generic form, there's about 5 or 6 different manufacturers that I'm aware of for atorvastatin. There may actually be more. I'm just aware of about 5 or 6 manufacturers. Now, the problem is that manufacturer may be offering the drug for $10 for 30 days. Another one may be offering it for $5 for 30 days. Another one, and when I say offering it, I mean offering it to your pharmacist, not to you. Because the manufacturer does not sell drugs to you. The manufacturer sells drugs to your pharmacist. Actually, there's a couple other steps in between, but I'm making it, as simple as this is going to get. So one may be doing it at $10, one may be doing it at $5. The thing is, some may be doing it at $35. So it's hard to know exactly what's happening there. Now, the thing is, when you have a prescription for a drug, unless the prescription specifically states to get that drug from a certain manufacturer, and there is a way a doctor can do it, although a doctor is not usually going to do that unless there is a specific reason to, then your pharmacist is going to get you the drug from whatever manufacturer the pharmacist can get you the drug at. By changing manufacturers, that changes the price. Now, how does that matter to you? It may not matter at all. If you have a drug that, and I'm just going to use an example, and again, no companies are going to be listed on these videos, so I'm going to be speaking generically here. No pun intended. If you have a prescription drug plan or a Medicare Advantage with prescription drug coverage, and it is a Tier 1 drug, that drug is Tier 1, and a Tier 1 drug for that particular year has no deductible, no coinsurance, and no copay. That means all Tier 1 drugs, at least until the coverage gap, are $0 for you. It's not going to matter if that drug retails for $5 or $10 or $35 or $50. If the pharmacist changes manufacturer mid-year, because they're allowed to, that drug is going to remain $0 to you. You probably won't even notice. It is the rare person who's going to notice that the retail cost when they get their monthly statement of benefits from their insurance company may make a change. Not too many people are going to notice. Those that do notice, even fewer are going to care. Whether or not you should care, that's a different story. I'd actually argue that there is a reason to care about it, but I'm not going to get into that here. Excuse me. So, if you have no deductible and no copay on that drug, you're not going to care. Now, if that drug has a copay on it, there's another video, a very most popular video we've done. What is the difference between a deductible, coinsurance, and copayment? If you haven't seen it yet, feel free to watch it. It is apparently answering a lot of people's questions. But if you have a drug with no deductible and a copay, which is a set amount of money, then you're probably not going to notice or care if the drug changes manufacturers. That means that a copay is a set amount of money. If your copay is $5 and there's no deductible in front of that, then it doesn't matter if that drug costs $5 or $30 or $50 or $10. All that's going to matter to you is $5. Anything else, it comes out of the category earlier of, do you pay nothing? Well, if you pay nothing, or if you knew you were going to pay $5 and you pay $5, you're not going to notice if it went from $5 to $50 on the summary of benefits. You're just going to notice that you paid $5 still. However, here's where people start noticing. If that drug is on a coinsurance or you still have a deductible, you're going to notice. Now, what that means, if in the deductible format, the deductible portion of this, if you have a $5 drug and the pharmacist changed manufacturers and you now have a $7 drug, in the deductible period, you're going to pay $5 from the first manufacturer and $7 from the second manufacturer. You'll notice that. Whether or not you care, I don't know, but you'll notice that. Where it becomes more concerning, however, is if you have a coinsurance. Now, coinsurance is not a copay. A copay is a set dollar amount. A coinsurance is a percentage of the cost of the drug. That generally people think of as, say, 20%. Medicare Part B has coinsurance. Medicare pays 80%, you're responsible for 20% of the cost. Some drugs in some plans make you pay coinsurance, and that means that you are paying 20% of the cost, 10% of the cost, 15%, 25%. If it is a $5 drug, a $5 generic drug, you're not going to notice having to pay 25% of it. But if that drug, say, has been $5, if it has been one manufacturer, then for whatever reason, and sometimes it's not even in the pharmacy's control, that manufacturer switches and that drug's cost goes from $5 to $65, you suddenly notice, if you have either a deductible or a coinsurance, your responsibility could go from having $1 to pay to $20 to pay. How do I know this is not an exaggeration? This question came up because it's a real number that just happened to a client. They did nothing wrong. The insurance company did nothing wrong. The pharmacy, I don't even know if the pharmacy did this deliberately or if it's because of the package deal that happened because they had to change manufacturers because of some of the internal workings. It may not have even been the pharmacy's fault, but the manufacturer of a particular drug changed and went from $5 to about $65. The client went from having to pay about $1 for 30 days with their coinsurance to having to pay about $30 per 30 days for their coinsurance. It was a bigger deal, and it is a bigger deal for some people depending on how much you want to budget, how much you expect to budget. The first, and you're not even going to think, it's not even going to be in your radar that the prescription drug plan made a change. That the manufacturer has changed. You won't even consider that. Your first thought is going to be the insurance stopped working. That's where investigation comes in. That's where we step back in and do our part to see what happened, what we can do about it. So we're going to start looking, and we're going to start backtracking. We're going to start checking, asking you for a copy of your statement of benefits. We're going to then go to the pharmacy. We're going to ask why. We're going to ask the insurance company. Eventually, we're going to find out the manufacturer changed, therefore the price of the drug changed. Now, you may then ask, well, what happens if the manufacturer, what happens if I change a plan? Or wouldn't it be better if I just have a prescription drug plan that gives me co-pays instead? Actually, no, it doesn't necessarily wind up being better, because if you have a co-pay plan, you're going to wind up paying the retail cost or a co-pay, whichever is lower. And in some cases, if the retail cost is only is within a couple of dollars of the copay, then there's not that much savings. However, if the copay is 20% and the retail cost is pretty close to what a copay would have been, you're going to pay a whole lot less. It's a difference between paying $5 for a drug or 80 cents for a drug. So it can really make a big difference. We do our best to get these costs down, but when you have a manufacturer's change in the middle of the year, that's nothing anyone predicted, and it's one of those things that's out of your control. There's only so much that you can do, so much that you can control in the middle of the year. Sometimes those things just happen, and I know that sounds kind of like an off-the-cuff remark, or kind of just one of those things you say, but it's really not. I mean, these things, there's actually a number of hands in between where the manufacturer is and where the pharmacist is that sells you the prescription drug. There are some other points that go on, especially for some of these drugs that are very highly controlled. So just one of those chinks in the chain is enough to change the manufacturer on the pharmacist's level, and that can cause a change in your prescription drug plan. When these things happen, you roll with the punches as best you can. Sometimes you can ask your doctor for a request that the old manufacturer be reinstated. The doctor is allowed to do that. Sometimes you can change pharmacies to get your price back to where you want to go. Sometimes you just have to wait until the end of the year when we can find you a new prescription drug plan. But either way, these are the things that we kind of look at each year. But when it comes to when a manufacturer's price change on the prescription drug, because the manufacturer itself changes, we kind of take that on a case-by-case basis. But yeah, it's a real thing. Yes, it can happen to you. It's usually a generic drug problem. It's usually not that big of a deal in dollars and cents, but it does certainly turn on people's alarm bells, because suddenly they've been paying a certain amount of money all year for a drug. Suddenly that cost goes up, even if it's by $1 or $2, and people are going to call us wanting to know the answer. A lot of times that manufacturer is the answer to what the problem was.